evening and welcome to Unraveled. I'm Marvi Sirmed. Tonight, I want to take a moment away from the usual breaking news and unfolding crises and reflect on something that's quietly unraveling before our eyes: the credibility of Indian media, especially its so called liberal and senior voices. Journalists are supposed to be the conscience of the society, truth tellers, not cheerleaders. But what we are witnessing lately, especially from some of the most respected Indian journalists, is not just disappointing, it is disturbing. Let's talk about it. We all remember what happened in May when India launched cross border strikes inside Pakistani territory following the Pahalgam terrorist attack. While governments exchanged accusations, a war of narratives exploded across television studios and social media feeds. And that's when Indian mainstream media truly lost the plot in full view of the international community. One might expect that in such moments of crisis, media houses and prominent anchors would uphold their professional ethics. But instead, what we saw was a frenzied display of hyper-nationalism, misinformation, rather disinformation, and performative outrage where facts didn't matter and propaganda passed for patriotism. Shockingly, some of the most respected names in Indian journalism, people who were once considered paragons of editorial seriousness, chose the lowest common denominator. Take, for instance, one of my very dear colleagues from across the border, whom I truly respect for the courage with which she has reported from conflict zones and, her overall journalistic trajectory. But her reporting during this recent Indian aggression against Pakistan included posts claiming capture of Pakistani pilots and whatnot, something that never happened, nor did, reportedly at least, any Indian military official ever claimed these things, which were reported by various Indian media, Indian journalists, including, my friends in Indian media. Maybe the officials leaked this kind of disinformation to the selected media persons on purpose, who knows? But then one expects better from such big, respected names as the ones I'm talking about. I don't want to name any names right now, but you get the gist. But you see, these friends of mine in Indian media, they were not alone. They were not alone. They were, one after the other, all the senior and junior and the mid-level journalists on TV screens and on YouTube channels, on social media feeds, they left themselves at the mercy of this avalanche of pugnacious triumphalism, even when all of their frenzied reporting had proven false. None of them corrected themselves. None of them showed even an iota of professional courtesy and journalistic ethics by retracting the false reporting, or seeking the apology from their readers, their own readers, and their own viewers, the people of India. One of the Hindi language TV channels perhaps made a feeble and long winded attempt at doing so, but frankly, the damage had already done. A fabricated moment of triumph with concocted facts had already gone viral and had amply fed hyper-nationalistic, xenophobic fervor, leaving facts in the dust. And then came Piers Morgan's show. Yeah, you you must recall that show. Two participants from India shared the screen with Pakistan's former Foreign Minister Hina Rabani Kar and a social media influencer Shehzad Ghaiyas. He's also a journalist and comedian and runs a YouTube Pakistan, one of the Pakistan's most prominent and most popular YouTube channels. Despite the fact that Morgan, the host of the show, invited his Indian guest, a senior and respected journalist, to frame the debate. Um, and she was also the one who got the last word at the end of the show. So clearly, the show was skewed in in one direction. Unfortunately, it did not feel like a moment of debate. It was a masterclass in juvenile hostility. Eye rolls, smirks, facial contortions. Indian participants' demeanor was not just unprofessional, it was embarrassingly petty. Especially a journalist of that stature, reducing themselves to a troll like posture on an international platform, spoke volumes about the Indian media's descent into chauvinism. And now we have Karan Thapar's interview with Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. Let me be very clear. I have admired Karan Thapar, his work, for years. His interviews with Indian political leaders and actually personalities from all over the world have often been, courageous, incisive, critical, and, you know, awesome. But his recent conversation with Bilawal Bhutto Zardari was not one of those moments. Instead of a dialogue, we witnessed a cross-examination of performance designed less to illuminate and more to dominate. Karan interrupted constantly, often cutting off Bilawal mid-thought, rarely allowing a full answer to emerge. The conversation never had the chance to evolve. It was stunted by a tone that felt more like a prosecutor in a courtroom than a journalist seeking clarity. The framing was predictable, even lazy. Why does Pakistan export terrorism? Asked in a variations, over and over again, as if that's the only framework available to understand the region. That was the only thing, there was no effort from Karan to actually explore it, to actually to try to critically approach the issue. There was absolutely no effort in that direction. Even when Bilawal Bhutto highlighted Pakistan's extensive counterterrorism operations, its own civilian losses and FATF compliant measures, Karan brushed past them with indifference. It was a really sad moment for me as a student of journalism who is always just too keen to learn from these maestros. No matter the color of their passports, no matter the color of their skin, or whatever religion they profess or do not profess, it was very sad for me because Karan in that show looked like he was under a lot of pressure and in a hurry to prove something, to prove that he's angry on Pakistan enough and he can insult a politician from Pakistan enough to be taken as a certified patriot. That stamp, that seal of patriotism is far more important in today's India than preserving the sanctity of whatever little is left of the noble profession of journalism in India. Don't get me wrong. I do not agree with whatever Bilawal said, with everything that Bilawal said while responding to Karan's badgering. There are so many nuances and there's so many facts that could have been brought into the discussion. There are too many questions, counter questions that could have been asked of Bilawal Bhutto. Only and only if the objective was to hold a debate and scratch the surface enough to lay bare the truth. But it seems that that was not even a minuscule part of the intention. This was not journalism. It was nationalist theater, wearing a blazer. And what's tragic is that this isn't an isolated case. We are witnessing a pattern. Seasoned, once progressive journalists in India are becoming unbearably narrow minded, jingoistic to the point of caricature. Whether it's the mainstream TV anchors or elite YouTubers, the competitive populism and hyper-nationalist belligerence have engulfed the Indian media ecosystem. And here's the rub. It doesn't stay contained. Pakistani media too is beginning to mirror that tone, while not yet as belligerent or as overtly aggressive. The echo of this kind of hyper nationalism is getting louder and louder in Pakistan as well. When journalism turns into this kind of performative patriotism on one side, and the other side then, the other side soon responds in kind. It has to, it happens, it has happened. What gets lost in this noisy back and forth? What? Peace, reason, humanity, journalism, and most of all, truth. We, journalists, academics, public thinkers, we must remember that patriotism is not about echoing the state. It is about speaking the truth even when it is inconvenient and asking questions that put the powers on their toes so they don't lie to their people. The goal is not to win interviews by humiliating the guest, not to flatter governments by amplifying their talking points. The goal is to inform, provoke thought, and open space for critical, humane dialogue. When senior Indian journalists roll their eyes at Pakistani voices, interrupt rather than engage, and prioritize internet virality over nuanced understanding, they do a disservice not just to their audiences, but to the very ideals of journalism. At Unraveled, we reject this model. We believe in confronting power without losing our humanity, in disagreeing without dehumanizing, and in remembering that the border is not a line that divides truth from fiction. We will continue to strive for a journalism that asks difficult questions, listens to complex answers, and refuses to descend into chest thumping nationalism. Because if journalists become nationalists first and professionals later, then the very idea of journalism has already unraveled. But you know what? There is still space for integrity, for courage, for truth, if we choose to claim it. I'll leave you with this thought. Please see the pinned comments underneath and let me know what you think of it. I'll wait for your comments. Good night for now, and thank you for watching.